But the truth is, it's a million miles from the reality of EU-Africa trade policy as it exists now, because our economic relations with Africa are simply a continuation of European colonialism, perpetuating exploitation by other means. Africa trades more with Europe than it does with itself. It's portrayed as a poor continent, but actually it's the richest. It's just that the people there are denied the fruits of their land and their labour by unequal economic relations, by unfair trade rules, by illicit capital flights into the Western banks, and by multinational corporations allowed off the leash by Washington, London and Brussels.
In this video, this white lady speaks the truth in front of a white audience, and this annoys or provoke this audience because this lady is speaking the truth. She speaks on the relationship between Africa and Europe and the West, and how the West and Europe is siphoning resources from Africa, exploiting Africa, and then imposing a lot of trade restrictions and regulations on Africa to the benefit of the West and Europe, leaving Africa impoverished or in poverty. So let's watch the full video. We'll come back here and discuss further about it. But before we watch the video, if you haven't yet liked this video, kindly like the video and also subscribe to the channel. Let's watch the video together.
But the truth is, it's a million miles from the reality of EU-Africa trade policy as it exists now, because our economic relations with Africa are simply a continuation of European colonialism, perpetuating exploitation by other means. Africa trades more with Europe than it does with itself. It's portrayed as a poor continent, but actually it's the richest. It's just that the people there are denied the fruits of their land and their labour by unequal economic relations, by unfair trade rules, by illicit capital flights into the Western banks, and by multinational corporations allowed off the leash by Washington, London and Brussels. I don't think you'd have to be a genius to know that the last thing the Horn of Africa needs is more foreign military bases, more weapons and more European meddling. What we call our strategic relationship isn't about human flourishing, it's about the EU's ambitions as a superpower. There's now a new great game in the Horn of Africa. Greater and lesser powers are pockmarking the place with military bases. France, the US, China, Germany, Japan, Italy, Saudi Arabia all have a presence in the tiny area of Djibouti alone. Mercenaries are swarming in from all quarters. The entire region is being militarized. War is in the air. And what about the people facing climate and food insecurity? None of this benefits them. We talk about instability, but we only make it worse. We flood the place with weapons, hand over the profits to European arms companies, and charge the bill to our citizens. And then with the carnage, we go back in and we do it all again. It's a racket. Strategic relationship, it's one thing after another, isn't it? Really, it's the same as it ever was. And all I can say is, God save Africa from Europeans offering help.
Africa could potentially be the greatest partner, ally, and customer base that the Europeans ever had, but only if they rethink the relationship they have with the African nations and put an end to what we refer to as neo-colonialism. First, let me ask the Westerners, how have regular Europeans benefited from the current relationship with Africa? And I don't mean the ultra-rich, I mean the regular person in Europe working a 9-to-5 trying to make ends meet. I can't think of many ways, if any. Regular French people aren't exactly getting a dividend payment from the financial chicanery with the West African franc. Regular Germans aren't getting energy resources any cheaper from the European mining companies in Africa than if they dealt with the Africans directly. Regular Swiss citizens aren't getting any kickbacks when money is laundered through their country. So why let this system continue? In the back of Europeans' minds, maybe they think they are benefiting from the current relationship with Africa, but in reality, only a small group of people are benefiting, and if you're watching the video, you aren't one of them. Here's the real cold water for the Europeans. Those people who are exploiting Africa are also exploiting you. Most Europeans can't afford to have families before 30 if they have kids at all. Europeans are seeing their healthcare services cut, they are seeing prices rise as the European Union engages in reckless monetary policy to give handouts to international banks. And those financial conglomerates you're hosting don't care about Europe. They believe destabilizing Africa to exploit it for its resources, as well as lowering European standards of living by piling them in debt, are equally good business models. So how about an alternative path, where Europeans stop letting a small group of special special interests dictate their relationships with the rest of the world, particularly with Africa? How about not letting the European continent be a safe house for some of the most corrupt people in the world? And why not create mutually beneficial relationships with the rest of the world where the regular European and the regular African both benefit? We are going to be talking about this on Friday, September 22nd from 2:30 p.m. to 8 p.m. at the UN General Assembly in New York City. We are going to have panel discussions on topics ranging from real estate in Africa, opening businesses, industrial development, opportunities for the diaspora, and how to make that first step towards investing in the success of Africa. If you're looking to get investors for a project, you 100% need to come to this event and pitch your vision at the Deal Room. This event is free, but does require an RSVP, which you can find at Eventbrite. Just search for AFPC United Nations General Assembly. And if you can't make it to New York, we will be streaming on youtube.com/@businessinnigeria. Thanks to my friend Kenem, who you should definitely follow on social media. Now, I'm not asking anyone to support these Pan-African events because it's the right thing to do or make any appeal to an individual's morality. Instead, I want people in the Western world to realize that rethinking their relationship with Africa is just good business sense. And if you come to New York City, you'll see what I mean. But I want to know what you guys think. Do you think Europeans should support Pan-Africanism? Have you attended any Pan-African events recently? How did it go? And do you think that the regular people in the Western world can regain control of their governments and repair their relationships with Africa? Let me know in the comments below. And as always, if this video provided value to you, give me a like and a follow. That really helps out my channel, and I'll see you on the next video. Or maybe we'll see you at the UN in New York City this weekend. If you make it, be sure to say hi. Take care, guys.
White people aren't having kids, and that's why I'm not investing in white areas. I'm investing in Africa and places where there's actually population growth. Now, I know that's not politically correct to say, but ultimately, my fiduciary responsibility is to my business and the people I advise, and I gotta tell them what's really happening. And the reality is, if you're investing in areas that have majority white populations, long term, those investments are not going to be very good. Now, in the short term, yes, these investments in white-based areas can be very good because you generally have two incomes in households and they throw all of their money into consumption or maybe having one or two kids. That's great on the short term. But long term, once these people get older, that's game over for them. Take Ghana, for example. In Ghana, a population right now is about 35, 36 million. Some people put it a little bit higher, but the population is projected this century by about 2050, 2060 to be more in that 60 to 70 million range. So the demand for goods and services, the demand for real estate, the demand for everything, the workforce is all going to be dramatically improved in Ghana. Whereas in these white areas, I mean, having 1, 2 kids, population is just going to, and if you're in these areas long term, you better hope that there's immigration. Otherwise, the economy is just going to shut down. If you're looking to invest long term, consider Africa.
All French soldiers and military must leave the African continent, and this also should apply to neo-colonial military bases, including the African Command Center of the USA. We don't want the army of America. We don't want the army of France here. We don't want the army of anyone. We want African army on African soil.
Tell me, why is it that we are here in Ghana? There is a military base here that American soldiers can walk in. No passport, no ID. They walk right through. If they commit crimes, they rape women, they kill women. No policeman in Ghana can touch them. Why? Where is the Ghanaian military base in the United States? Where is the French military base? Where is the Burkina Faso military base in France? Where is the Nigerian military base in Russia? Every superpower is building bases throughout Africa. Where are the African military bases in those countries? As I say some of these things, it's almost like it's a joke. So we need more Traores in Africa. Nigeria said when the US government increased their visa to 250 to get a visa to go to the United States, Nigeria said, no worries, you also have to pay 250 if your people want a visa. But turn around and go to Namibia. I was shocked. Namibians pay about $170 to get a visa to go to the United States, but Americans, when they go to Namibia, nothing, zero, not a penny. Just come. Now guys, let's have a serious conversation here. Who is stupid? Whose problem is it? We are the problem. What is leadership doing? Leadership is doing nothing. Leadership is voting on sheer stupidity. Stupidity that is causing us havoc. The same people who are abusing us, taking advantage of us, exploiting us, they are laughing at us because we are jokers. What are we doing in our parliaments? And that is why you see what's happening in Burkina Faso, what's happening in Niger, what's happening in Mali. The youth are saying, now we know. Now our eyes are open. Now we know who the real problem is. Yes, we know the enemy as the former colonizers. We know the enemy as the multinationals who are in our countries, siphoning as much as they can. Yes, we know the NGOs are nothing but wolf in sheep's clothing. Yes, we know some of the embassies are no good. They are there to make sure that the instability in our countries continue. We know all that. However, we also know that our leaders could stop it. So yes, it is that the youth are rising. The youth are saying, you leaders, if you do not do the right thing, we will replace you. So we need more Traores in Africa. What's happening in Burkina Faso must be supported. What's happening in Niger must be supported. What's happening in Mali must be supported. The youth of Africa are sick and tired of being sick and tired. The issues of the root must be addressed. World Bank must stop giving us frivolous loans. World Bank must treat Africa fairly. Ours is a simple ask. We are simply saying to the world, we demand Africa that can be treated fairly, an Africa that can be treated as equals on the world stage, an Africa that is free of racism, bigotry, and hate. Our ask is a simple one. Our position is of stating the facts, stating the truth, constants that do not change. We're simply asking that the world does unto us what they would want done unto them. Anybody that has an issue that Africa has taken is somebody who is under earth. We want a peaceful world. We want a world that is just. And that is all we're asking.
Why is it that we are unable to come together and speak our truth and demand that what needs to be done must be done? It's because they defeated us where it matters the most, which is the mind. It started with the missionaries in Africa long before slavery. They were sent by the Roman Catholic Church to subdue the Africans, make them believe that when you get slapped, turn the other cheek, and that your riches are in heaven. So by the time they followed with the colonizers to reap and rape Africa, we were already brainwashed. We were meant to believe everything African was bad and undesirable, and everything European was better.
Welcome back. So in this video, this white lady explains the situation between Africa and the West and Europe, the trade relations that Africa has with Europe and the West, and how Africa is being exploited by the West and Europe. This has gone on for centuries, and it is still going on in this age and in this time. Colonialism took place a while ago, and as at now, a new version of colonialism, that is neo-colonialism, is also taking place, and Africa is still being exploited. The raw materials and natural resources of Africa is not used to the benefit of Africans. Africans living in Africa live a very poor and impoverished life, whereas the resources that are being mined from Africa are used to the benefit of people who live in the West and Europe. Now, the trade rules with Africa is still a continuation of colonialism. That is one thing that she stated over there. Africa has been exploited over the years, and still Africa is being exploited. All the trade rules between Africa and Europe or the West is a continuation of colonialism. It is the same thing that existed in the past that is still existing now. There hasn't been much of a change. Africa is just a raw producing continent, raw material producing continent. We produce all the natural and mineral resources over here, and then it is being shipped from Africa to Europe for value to be added to it. So talk of all the raw materials in the world, the cocoa, the gold, the diamond, the timber, all those mineral resources and everything is mined over here in Africa. Then it is being exported from Africa to Europe and the West, and value is added to it over there and shipped back to Africa for us to buy it at even higher price. So all these trade rules do not favor Africa. Now, she calls for a situation whereby the trade rules between Africa and the West and Europe will be fair enough so that Africa would also be able to have a share of the cake, so that Africa would also be able to enjoy from the sweats of its labor. But it is never so. Africa has always been a suffering continent, whereas its resources is being siphoned or taken away by the West. So this is what she says, and she calls for a revision of this policy. Now, one man also spoke that it is very wise for you to also invest in Africa, because Africa has a growing population, and in about 5 decades from now, the population in Africa is going to double, and so that will help. If you are an investor and you invest in these areas, it is going to help your investment to thrive, and you're going to benefit a lot from your investment. Whereas places like the West, which has declining birth rate or population growth, it is a loss for you to invest in such areas, or it is not advantageous for you to invest in these areas, because in the long run you are going to lose out on this. Now, the most important part of these clips that we watched, to me, is the lady who says that there should be a revision of the trade policies between Africa and the West and Europe, because Africa has been exploited a lot, and this exploitation needs to end so that the people of Africa can also enjoy from the sweat of their labor. Let me know what you also think about this in the comment section below. Also, don't forget to share this video with your friends and your family on WhatsApp, Facebook, Instagram, X, TikTok, and other social media platforms. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Just click the subscribe button down here. Click on the subscribe button. Click as well on the notification bell. And I'd like to see you again in my next video.